Claire held Ethan's small hand tight as she rushed through the hospital doors. His face was pale and his breathing was weak. Her heart pounded as she tried to stay calm for her son. She told the nurse at the counter what had happened and begged for help. The nurse nodded and called for a doctor. Soon, Ethan was taken inside for tests. While she waited, Claire sat on a hard chair, her hands shaking. She thought about the bills already stacked on her kitchen table at home. Her paycheck from the diner barely covered rent and food. She had no savings left. She had tried every way she could to keep them afloat. Since Ethan's father walked out years ago, but this was different. This was her child's life, and she had no money for it. A doctor came out and told her Ethan needed medicine right away. Claire nodded quickly and hurried to the payment desk. The nurse typed numbers into the screen and then looked up with a firm face. The cost was far more than Claire could manage. Her chest felt tight and her eyes burned. She explained she did not have the money. The nurse shook her head and said the medicine could not be given without payment. Claire felt her knees weaken. She tried again, her voice breaking, asking if there was any way they could help her. The nurse looked sorry, but repeated the rule. Claire bit her lip hard to keep from crying in front of everyone. She thought about calling someone, but there was no one left. Her family was gone, and her friends were just as poor as she was. Behind her, the line grew longer. People sighed and shuffled their feet. Claire felt their eyes on her back. She wanted to disappear. She pressed her hands to the counter and tried to think of something, anything, that could save her son. She whispered to herself that she would work day and night if they just gave her time. Suddenly, a voice spoke from behind her. It was deep, calm, and sure. He said, "Charge it to me." The words were clear and strong, and they cut through the noise of the waiting room. Claire froze and turned slowly. Standing a few steps away was a tall man in a dark suit. His eyes were steady on hers, and his face showed no doubt. He repeated himself, telling the nurse to put the bill in his name. Claire stared at him, her lips parted. She had never seen him before. His suit looked expensive, and his watch shined under the bright lights. He looked like a man who belonged to a different world. She wanted to speak, to ask why, but her throat was tight. The nurse looked surprised, but quickly nodded and began typing again. The medicine was approved within minutes. Tears filled Claire's eyes as she turned back to the man. She tried to thank him, but he gave a small shake of his head. It was as if he did not want gratitude. Before she could say more, he stepped back. His tall figure blended into the crowd, and then he was gone. It all happened so fast that Claire wondered if she had imagined it. But Ethan received the medicine that night, and his breathing began to ease. Claire sat beside his bed, holding his hand, her mind racing. She thought of the man's voice and the calm look in his eyes. He was a stranger, yet in that moment he had given her something priceless. She did not know his name, only the weight of his kindness. Her heart ached with both relief and confusion. She whispered to Ethan that they would be all right now. But inside she knew this was only the beginning of something she could not yet understand. The next morning, the hospital room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Claire sat in the chair beside Ethan's bed, her eyes heavy from staying awake all night. She watched her son sleep, his color slowly returning. She brushed a strand of hair from his forehead and whispered that he was safe now. Her heart was calmer, but her mind was restless. She could not stop thinking about the man who had appeared and vanished like a shadow. She replayed his voice again and again in her head. "Charge it to me." The way he said it carried no pride, no show, only certainty. Claire tried to make sense of it. Why would a stranger spend so much for her child without asking anything in return? She wanted to believe it was simple kindness, but it felt like more. His eyes had locked with hers for one moment, and she had felt something she could not name. Later that day, Claire signed discharge papers and held Ethan's hand as they left the hospital. He was weak but smiling, asking for pancakes once they got home. Claire promised she would make them. As they walked through the lobby, she searched for the man, half hoping he might appear again. But the space was filled with strangers, none of them him. She stepped out into the bright sunlight, unsure if she would ever see him again. Back at their small apartment, Claire cooked pancakes while Ethan drew pictures at the table. He drew a tall man with broad shoulders beside a little boy. When Claire asked who it was, Ethan said it was the man who saved him. Claire's chest tightened as she looked at the drawing. Even her son felt the weight of what had happened. She tucked the picture away, not ready to explain to him that they might never see that man again. Days passed. Claire went back to her job at the diner, serving coffee and plates of eggs to the morning crowd. The regular customers joked with her, but she smiled only on the surface. Inside, her thoughts wandered. She listened to the door each time it opened, wondering if the stranger might walk in. He never did. One evening, after a long shift, Claire sat on the bus with Ethan asleep against her shoulder. She looked out the window at the lights of the city. She told herself not to hope, that she should be thankful for what he had done and move on. But a strange pull inside her whispered otherwise. It was as if a thin thread tied her to him, invisible yet unbreakable. Then came the day when fate crossed their paths again. Claire was walking home with groceries, Ethan skipping beside her, when the sky opened with sudden rain. She hurried toward a small cafe on the corner to take shelter. Inside it was warm and crowded. She shook the water from her coat and guided Ethan to a table near the window. She ordered cocoa for him and tea for herself. As she lifted the cup to her lips, the door opened and her breath caught. He walked in, tall and composed, the same suit pressed neatly, his presence commanding without effort. He scanned the room, and for a moment his eyes landed on hers. Claire froze, her hand trembling slightly. Ethan noticed and looked too, his face lighting up. He waved and called out, "Hero." The man's expression softened as he walked toward their table. Claire's heart raced. She wanted to stand, but stayed seated, gripping her cup like a lifeline. The stranger stopped before her and gave a slight nod. Claire managed to speak this time, her voice quiet but clear. "Thank you." It was the first chance she had to say the words she had carried inside since that night. He only gave a small smile, as if her gratitude was not needed. Still, in that moment, Claire felt the invisible string tighten between them. Claire sat across from the man in the cafe, her fingers wrapped tight around her cup. Ethan leaned forward, smiling at him with pure trust. The man looked at Ethan with a warmth that surprised Claire. For someone so polished and distant, his eyes softened as if he had known the boy for years. Claire finally found her voice. She told him she had been looking for a way to thank him, but he shook his head. He said it was nothing. To Claire, it was not nothing. It was life itself. She wanted him to understand that. She pressed him for his name. After a pause, he said, "Alex." The name settled in her mind like a secret she would never forget. Ethan, bold in his innocence, asked Alex if he liked pancakes. Alex gave a short laugh, the sound low and rare, and said he had not eaten them in years. Ethan grinned and invited him to their apartment for breakfast. Claire flushed with embarrassment, but Alex only smiled and said maybe one day. As the rain fell outside, the three of them talked. Claire was careful not to reveal too much of her struggles, but Alex listened closely. He asked questions about Ethan's school, about the little drawings he made, about the books Claire liked to read. Claire realized no one had asked her such things in a long time. Alex's attention was steady, not shallow, and it unsettled her in ways she could not explain. When it was time to leave, Alex stood and helped Claire with her bag of groceries. His hand brushed hers for a moment, and a strange current passed between them. Claire pulled back quickly, her heart pounding, unsure if he felt the same. She told herself it was just her mind, but deep down, she knew it was more. In the days that followed, Claire found herself seeing Alex again. Sometimes he appeared at the cafe where she stopped with Ethan after school. Other times he would be outside the diner waiting to walk her home. He never forced his company. He came quietly, as if drawn by the same thread she felt inside. Claire tried to resist at first. She told herself she should not depend on someone like him, someone from a world so far above hers. But each time he showed up, her guard slipped a little more. One evening, Claire closed the diner and stepped out into the cool night air. She saw Alex leaning against a sleek black car, his hands in his pockets. He asked if she wanted a ride home. She hesitated, then agreed. The ride was silent at first. The city lights flashed across the windows as Claire stole glances at him. He looked tired, his jaw tight, as if carrying a weight no one else could see. Finally, Alex spoke. He told her he had grown up in wealth, but it had been a lonely place. People wanted his money, not his heart. He admitted he rarely trusted anyone. Claire listened, surprised he would share such things with her. She told him about her own struggles, about raising Ethan alone, about working 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. The car slowed as they reached her street, and for a moment they sat in silence, both knowing they had revealed too much, and yet not enough. Ethan, half asleep in the back seat, stirred and called Alex's name. Alex turned and adjusted the boy's blanket with careful hands. Claire watched the gesture, her chest tightening. It was the smallest act, yet it told her more than words could. She realized he was not just a man who had saved her child. He was becoming part of their lives in ways she had not planned. She stepped out of the car with Ethan in her arms, and as Alex drove away, she felt the string between them grow even stronger. Days turned into weeks, and Alex began to appear more often in Claire's world. Sometimes he stopped by the diner, sitting at a corner booth with a cup of coffee while Claire worked. Other times he walked Ethan home from school when Claire had late shifts. He never pushed himself into their lives, but his presence grew steady, like a thread weaving into the fabric of their days. Claire noticed how Ethan lit up whenever Alex was near. The boy would chatter about his drawings, his favorite books, and his dreams of becoming a doctor one day. Alex listened with patience and a quiet smile, as if nothing in the world mattered more than the boy's words. Claire's heart warmed at the sight, though it also made her uneasy. She wondered what it meant for a man like Alex to step into their small, fragile world. One Saturday morning, Alex accepted Ethan's invitation at last, came to their small apartment for breakfast. Claire felt nervous as she cooked pancakes, worrying the place was too small and plain for someone like him. Alex did not seem to care. He sat at the table with Ethan, laughing at his stories and praising Claire's cooking with a nod that felt honest. The simple morning felt like something more, something that touched Claire deeper than she wanted to admit. Their hands brushed, and Claire felt the same electric pull she had felt before. She pulled back quickly, but Alex noticed. His eyes lingered on hers for a moment, filled with something unspoken. Claire turned away, her cheeks warm, telling herself not to dream of what could never be. That afternoon, the 3 of them walked in the park. Ethan ran ahead, chasing pigeons while Claire and Alex strolled behind. Alex asked her what she wanted most in life. She hesitated, then said she only wanted Ethan to be healthy and safe. Alex studied her, then said she deserved more than survival. His words struck her, but she brushed them off, saying dreams were for people with money, not for people like her. Alex stopped walking for a moment, his gaze heavy. He told her money could not buy peace or family, and he envied what she had with Ethan. Claire was taken aback by his honesty. She realized for the first time that behind his wealth and power stood a man who carried his own loneliness. She wanted to comfort him, but she held back, afraid of crossing a line she could not return from. Later, when they returned home, Ethan fell asleep on the couch with his drawing book still in his hands. Claire covered him with a blanket and turned to find Alex watching. The room was quiet, the weight of the moment pressing between them. Alex stepped closer, his voice low, telling her he had not felt this kind of peace in years. Claire's breath caught, her heart racing. She wanted to tell him she felt the same, but fear stopped her. She reminded herself of the difference between their worlds. Alex left soon after, but the air still felt charged long after the door closed. Claire sat beside Ethan, staring at the shadows on the wall, torn between gratitude and a growing ache inside. She knew Alex was not just helping them, he was becoming part of their lives, and that terrified her. She whispered to herself that she must be careful. Yet deep down, she felt the invisible string pulling tighter, binding her to him in ways she could no longer deny. The weeks that followed were filled with both warmth and unease. Claire grew used to seeing Alex around, but she also heard whispers. At the diner, coworkers exchanged looks when he stopped by. Some regular customers hinted that she was lucky to have caught the eye of a rich man. The words stung. Claire had done nothing but accept his kindness, yet people painted their own stories. One afternoon, as Claire served coffee at the diner, 2 women sitting at a booth spoke loudly enough for her to hear. They said she was using Alex for his money, that she was nothing more than a poor single mom trying to climb higher. Claire kept her head down, but her cheeks burned. She wanted to shout that they were wrong, but she stayed silent. When her shift ended, she walked home with heavy steps, wondering if she should distance herself from Alex before the gossip grew worse.
Alex
noticed her mood that evening when he stopped by to see Ethan. Claire tried to hide it, but he saw the sadness in her eyes. He asked her what was wrong, but she shook her head and said it was nothing. Ethan ran to show Alex his newest drawing, and the moment passed. Still, Claire carried the weight of the rumors like a stone in her chest. A few days later, Alex faced his own storm. At a meeting in his company, one of his rivals brought up his visits to Claire's neighborhood. They suggested his judgment was clouded and hinted that he was wasting time on someone beneath his status. Alex kept his face calm, but inside he boiled with anger. He wanted to defend Claire, yet he knew speaking her name in that room would only bring her more trouble. That night, Alex drove to Claire's apartment. She let him in, sensing his tension. They sat at the small kitchen table, the air thick with unspoken words. Finally, Claire admitted what she had heard at the diner. She told him she did not want to harm his reputation, that maybe it was better if he stopped visiting. Her voice trembled as she said it, even though it broke her inside. Ethan, asleep in his room, had no idea of the storm swirling around them. Alex leaned forward, his eyes sharp. He told her he did not care about the rumors or the whispers. He said people had always talked about him, twisting stories to fit their own envy. Claire listened, torn between relief and fear. She told him she could handle people talking about her, but she could not bear to see Ethan hurt by cruel words. Alex reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. He told her he would not walk away. The connection between them was too strong. For a long moment, Claire stared at their joined hands. Her heart pulled toward him, yet her mind reminded her of the distance between their lives. She pulled her hand back gently and stood, saying she needed time. Alex respected her words, but before leaving, he said he was not going anywhere. His voice carried a weight that left Claire both comforted and afraid. After he left, Claire sat in the dark, listening to the soft sound of Ethan's breathing from the other room. She thought about the way Alex had looked at her, as if she was not invisible, as if she mattered. She wanted to believe in it, but the doubts pressed hard. She whispered to herself that she must protect Ethan first, no matter what. Yet deep inside, the invisible string that tied her to Alex pulled stronger than ever, refusing to let her heart escape. The sky was heavy with clouds the night Ethan's cough grew worse. Claire held him close, fear rushing through her as his small body shivered. She called the hospital and was told to bring him in at once. Rain began to fall as she wrapped him in a blanket and hurried to the street. Her hands trembled as she tried to find a cab, but every car passed without stopping. Suddenly, headlights appeared, and a sleek black car pulled to the curb. Alex stepped out, his coat already soaked by the rain. Without a word, he opened the door and guided Claire and Ethan inside. The warmth of the car wrapped around them, but Claire's fear did not ease. Ethan's breathing was shallow, his face pale. Alex drove fast, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the road. Inside the hospital, doctors rushed Ethan into a room. Claire stood frozen, watching through the glass as they worked. Alex stood beside her, silent but steady. She began to shake. He placed a hand on her shoulder. She looked up at him, and for the first time she saw the same fear in his eyes that filled her own. Hours passed before the doctor returned. Said Ethan needed new treatment, something stronger than before. Claire's voice broke as she asked about the cost. The doctor hesitated, but Alex stepped forward and said it would be handled. Claire turned to him, torn between gratitude and guilt. Alex told her not to think about money, that nothing mattered more than Ethan's life. When Ethan was finally stable and resting, Claire sat beside his bed. Alex pulled a chair next to hers. The room was quiet except for the steady rhythm of the monitor. Claire whispered that she did not understand why he cared so much. Alex looked at her, his eyes dark but honest, and said he had felt something the first moment he saw her. He said it was as if an invisible string tied him to her and her son, pulling him closer no matter how hard he tried to resist. Claire's chest tightened as she listened. She wanted to dismiss it, but her heart pounded with the truth of his words. She admitted she had felt the same, though she had been afraid to believe it. Her voice shook as she confessed she worried he would one day walk away, leaving her and Ethan broken. Alex reached for her hand and promised he would not. He said he had lived a life filled with walls, and for the first time he felt those walls breaking because of her. Tears filled Claire's eyes. She turned her face away, not wanting him to see, but he gently guided her back. His hand was warm, steady, and real. The storm outside pounded against the windows, but inside the room the world seemed still. Claire leaned into the comfort of his presence, her fear slowly melting under the weight of his promise. Later, as Ethan stirred and called weakly for his mother, Claire bent to comfort him. Alex stood behind her, watching the scene with quiet awe. For him, it was more than kindness now. It was belonging. He realized he wanted to be part of their lives, not as a stranger who paid bills, but as someone who stayed, someone who mattered. Claire saw it in his eyes when she looked up at him, and she felt the invisible string between them grow tighter, binding them together through storm and silence. Sunlight streamed through the hospital window the next morning. Claire opened her eyes to see Ethan sleeping peacefully, his breathing steady and calm. Relief washed over her, and she brushed her hand gently across his hair. For the first time in days, her heart felt light. She turned to see Alex sitting in the chair by the door, his head tilted back, asleep from exhaustion. He had stayed all night. Claire studied him quietly. The strong lines of his face, the dark circles under his eyes, the way his hand still rested close, as if ready to help. She realized he had carried her through the storm when she had nothing left. The thought both frightened and warmed her. She whispered his name, and his eyes opened slowly. When he saw her awake, he straightened and asked softly how she was. She nodded, unable to find words. Later, the doctor came and said Ethan's treatment had worked. With regular care, his future looked brighter. Claire's knees weakened with relief. She turned to Alex, and for once she did not fight the tears that came. He stepped forward and caught her as she leaned against him. For a long moment, she let herself rest in his arms, the weight of fear finally lifting. When Ethan woke, he smiled weakly at Alex and called him his hero again. Alex sat beside him and promised he would always be there. Claire watched as Ethan's small hand slipped into Alex's larger one. The sight made her heart ache in a way she had never known before. It was not just gratitude. It was something deeper, stronger, unshakable. After leaving the hospital, the three of them walked out together. The air was cool, the city alive with morning sounds. Claire looked at Alex, unsure what to say. Before she could speak, he told her he was not saving her. He was choosing her. He said he did not want repayment, only a place in her life and in Ethan's heart. His words struck deep, cutting through the doubts that had haunted her. Claire stopped walking. She turned to face him, her hands trembling. She told him she had spent years surviving, keeping her heart locked away, because love had left her once before. She said she was afraid to trust, afraid to hope. Alex stepped closer and told her that hope was all he wanted her to have. He said he could not promise a life without storms, but he promised he would never walk away. In that moment, Claire felt the invisible string that had pulled them together from the start. It was no longer something she feared, it was something she trusted. She reached out and took his hand, holding it tight. Ethan cheered beside them, not fully understanding, but sensing the joy around him. Claire laughed through her tears, and Alex's rare smile spread across his face. That evening, back at their apartment, Claire made pancakes again, just as Ethan had asked. The three of them sat at the small table, the room filled with simple warmth. It was not a palace or a mansion, but it was home. Alex looked around and said it was the first time in years he felt like he belonged somewhere. Claire met his eyes and saw the truth in them. He was not a stranger anymore. He was part of their family. As night fell and Ethan drifted to sleep, Claire stood at the window with Alex beside her. The city lights stretched far, but her world felt small and whole. She whispered that she never thought her life would change this way. Alex answered that sometimes life brings people together for reasons beyond reason. Claire believed him, because she could feel it. The soul string between them had been pulled tight, unbreakable, leading them to this moment where love was no longer a dream, but their shared truth.